The Whispering Waters. The Pascagoula River had always been more than just a body of water. It was alive, its currents flowing like veins through the land, carrying the whispers of those who had lived and died along its banks. The Pascagoula. People believed the river listened, that it carried their songs into the heart of the earth and back again, echoing through the wind. Every evening, just before the sun sank below the horizon, the Pascagoula would gather along the riverbank. Men, women, and children would join hands, lift their voices, and sing. Their melodies were not just songs but prayers, offered to the spirits of the water, who watched over them. Among them stood Altama, a young Pascagoula warrior with eyes like the deep woods and a heart that burned with a forbidden love. His gaze was fixed on the opposite shore, where the land of the Biloxi tribe began. He had no business longing for what lay beyond the river, yet he did. Because there, beyond the enemy's land, lived Enola. The daughter of the Biloxi chief, Enola was as wild and untamed as the wind. Her hair fell in dark waves around her shoulders, and her eyes held the golden fire of a sunset. From the moment Altama had seen her, he had loved her, despite knowing it could cost them both their lives. A rustling in the trees behind him made Altama tense. He turned, hand instinctively reaching for the knife at his waist, but then he saw her. Enola. She stepped toward him, the setting sun painting her in hues of orange and crimson. Her voice was soft, but urgent. "Altama," she whispered. "My father knows." The words sent a chill through him. "What has he done?" Enola swallowed hard. "He has promised me to Tacchuba. Tomorrow I will be his wife." Rage surged through Altama like wildfire. Tacchuba was not just any Biloxi warrior. He was their most ruthless, a man who had hunted and killed Pascagoula before. He was a beast, a conqueror. He would never love Enola the way Altama did. "No," Altama said fiercely. "I will not let this happen. Come with me. We leave tonight." Enola's lips trembled. She turned, looking back toward the Biloxi village, where torches were beginning to flicker in the distance. She could say no. She could walk away. But when she turned back to Altama, her fingers curled around his hand. "Yes," she whispered. "We run." Neither of them knew that fate had already written their story, and it would end with a song that never died. The Mai. Betrayal. The night air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, as Altama and Enola crept through the dense forest, their hands tightly clasped. The sound of the Pascagoula River rushing nearby was their only comfort in the darkness. Overhead, the moon was nearly full, its silver light spilling through the canopy, guiding their way. They moved quickly, knowing every step could be their last if they were caught. Altama's heart pounded in his chest, but not from fear. For he would rather die than let Enola be taken from him. Enola shivered, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Where will we go?" she whispered. "South," Altama murmured. "Beyond the marshlands, there is a village where we can be safe." But safety was an illusion. Unbeknownst to them, they were being followed. A sister's loyalty. Back at the Biloxi village, the fires burned low in the chief's lodge. Inside Kawila, Enola's younger sister sat at the foot of their father's chair, her hands twisting anxiously in her lap. She had seen everything. She had seen Enola slip away into the night. She had seen her sister's shawl disappear into the trees. And worst of all, she had seen who she had left with, a Pascagoula. Her stomach twisted with both anger and fear. How could Enola do this? How could she betray their father, their people? She could not remain silent. "Father," she said hesitantly. The Biloxi chief, a powerful man with dark, watchful eyes, turned his gaze toward her. "What troubles you, my daughter?" Kawila swallowed hard. "Enola is gone," she whispered. "She has fled, with the Pascagoula warrior." Silence fell over the room. Then, the chief's face darkened. His hands clenched into fists, and his breath came in, sharp, furious bursts. "Tacchuba," he bellowed. From the shadows of the lodge, a tall figure stepped forward. "Tacchuba." His broad shoulders were adorned with eagle feathers, his expression cold and unreadable. The chief's voice was low and dangerous. "Your bride has betrayed us." Takchuba's eyes narrowed. "Where did they go?" Cahuila hesitated, suddenly regretting her words. But it was too late. The chief rose to his full height. "Take your warriors, find them, bring my daughter back, and bring me the Pascagoula's head." Takchuba smiled. The hunt had begun. The chase begins. Through the darkness, the Biloxi warriors rode. Hoofbeats thundered across the forest floor as Takchuba led his men, their torches flickering like ghosts in the night. Their eyes burned with fury. Their hands tightened around their weapons. They would show no mercy, not to the Pascagoula and not to Enola, the chosen path. The night air grew colder as Altama and Enola reached the Pascagoula village, their feet aching from the journey. The village nestled along the riverbank was silent, its people resting in their homes, unaware of the storm about to descend upon them. Altama led Enola to the center of the village, where the elders sat around a dying fire, their faces lined with wisdom. Chief Nahaka, a man with long silver hair and eyes that had seen too much, studied them carefully. "Altama," he said, "why have you come at this hour?" Altama did not hesitate. "The Biloxi are coming," he said. "They will be here soon. We must leave." A murmur of concern spread among the gathered warriors. They had heard of Takchuba's cruelty. They knew what he was capable of. But Chief Nahaka remained calm. He looked to the river, its surface glistening in the moonlight. Then he turned back to his people. "No," he said, "we will not run." Altama frowned. "Then we must fight." Chief Nahaka shook his head. "We are not warriors. We are people of peace. If we fight, we will be slaughtered." Silence fell over the crowd. The crackling fire cast dancing shadows across their faces. Then the chief spoke again. "We will not be taken as prisoners. We will not be enslaved." He turned to the river. "The Pascagoula will walk into the water." A gasp ran through the village. Altama's heart stopped. "No," he whispered. "There must be another way." But Chief Nahaka's gaze was unwavering. "The river is our mother. She has given us life, and now she will protect us. If we walk into her arms, we will never be taken. We will never be slaves." Altama's hands tightened into fists. But as he looked around, he saw no fear in the eyes of his people. Only acceptance. Enola grasped his hand. "I will go with you," she said softly. "If this is the path, I choose it." Altama turned back to the dark water, and in the distance the sound of hoofbeats grew louder. The spirit of the river. The Pascagoula people stood on the edge of the river, their voices low and solemn. The Biloxi warriors had reached the village. Torches blazed in the night. Takchuba dismounted his horse, his eyes locking onto Enola. "Come to me," he ordered. Enola stepped back, clutching Altama's hand. Takchuba's expression darkened. "If you refuse, I will burn this village to the ground." But Chief Nahaka raised a hand. "No," he said simply. Then he stepped into the river. One by one, the Pascagoula followed. Men, women, children, all joined hands, their voices rising. In song, Takchuba watched in shock as they waded deeper. "The fools," he spat. "They will drown themselves." But as the water swallowed them, something happened. The river did not silence them. Instead, it sang back. A low, haunting melody rose from the depths, echoing through the night. The Biloxi warriors staggered back, their torches flickering. Then, the water shimmered, and for a brief moment, ghostly figures appeared on the surface, and then they were gone. But their song remained. The march to the waters. The Pascagoula people stood at the edge of the river, their hands clasped, their voices rising in a solemn hymn to the water. The night air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, but it was the presence of death that weighed upon them most. On the shore, the Biloxi warriors stood frozen. Their torches flickered, casting eerie shadows across the village. Takchuba, the fiercest of them, gritted his teeth in rage as he watched Enola step into the water alongside Altama. "Fools," he roared, stepping forward. "You choose death over my mercy?" Chief Nahaka, standing waist-deep in the river, lifted his arms toward the sky. "We choose freedom," he said. His voice was strong, unwavering. "We will not be your slaves." Takchuba's face twisted in fury. "Then you will drown like cowards." He lifted his spear, but something stopped him. A strange sound, a deep, humming vibration, rose from the river itself. It was as if the water had begun to sing. The Pascagoula did not stop moving. They walked deeper, their chant growing louder, stronger, merging with the river's melody. The current swirled around them, pulling them in, yet their voices never wavered. Altama felt the water rise to his chest, yet he felt no fear. He looked at Enola, and she smiled through her tears. "We are together," she whispered, and together they continued into the depths. One by one, the Pascagoula disappeared beneath the surface, but their song did not stop. The Biloxi warriors stood in horror as the last of them vanished, yet the air was filled with their voices, a chorus rising from below. Then suddenly the torches flickered violently. The air grew heavy. The river shimmered, and from the depths the ghostly figures of the Pascagoula seemed to rise, not as flesh but as mist, as song, as something eternal. A chill ran through Takchuba. "This is witchcraft," he whispered. But it was not. It was the spirit of the river itself, and the Pascagoula had become one with it. The final song. For what felt like eternity, the Biloxi warriors stared at the river, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The Pascagoula were gone, but their voices remained. Takchuba's hand clenched around his spear, his mind racing. He had never feared anything before, but now, standing before this singing river, he felt something beyond fear, something he could not name. The water hummed. The song rose and fell, not loud, but constant, flowing like a whisper through the trees. It carried sorrow, defiance, and something eternal. The Biloxi warriors began to back away. One of them muttered, "This place is cursed." Another dropped his weapon and turned to run. Even Takchuba, so filled with anger, hesitated. He knew he could not fight what he did not understand. The river's song would never fade. It would be there long after they were gone. Slowly, the Biloxi warriors turned away, their torches dimming as they vanished into the night, and the Pascagoula sang on. Echoes in the current. The years passed, and the Pascagoula River remained a mystery to those who came upon it. Settlers, fur traders, and explorers ventured into the land, unaware of the tragedy that had occurred on its shores, until they heard the song. It began softly, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, a low, mournful hum that rippled across the water. It did not belong to the wind. It did not belong to the trees. It was something else. The first settlers dismissed it. "It's just the water moving over rocks," they said. "It's nothing." But some of them left in the night, refusing to stay near the river for long, and those who dared to stay began to hear words. Not English, not French, but something older. The Pascagoula were still there, and they would never be forgotten. The settlers' fear. By the early 1700s, settlements had begun to form along the Gulf Coast. The Pascagoula River remained a place of beauty and abundance, but to those who lived near it, it was also a place of whispers and unease. Word spread among the French traders. The Biao River was haunted. One settler, Jean-Baptiste Moreau, refused to believe in such nonsense. "There are no spirits in the water," he scoffed. "It is only the current." But one night, as he sat alone in his canoe, drifting lazily down the river, he heard it, a voice, soft, melodic, calling his name. Moreau's blood ran cold. He spun around, searching for the source, but there was nothing. Only the silver ripples of the river stretching endlessly around him. And then, just as he went to paddle back to shore, his canoe lurched violently, as if something had touched it from beneath. Moreau never spoke of it again. but he left the Pascagoula River before the next full moon.